Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the next part of our series, Teaching in a COVID Environment. We're really excited to have José Peña here today with us. He's the Director of Color Guard at the Palm Desert Charter Middle School in California. Doing the interview today will be our very own Carol Abohatab from the Color Guard Steering Committee. I'm very excited to see what Jose has to offer. He has a very successful middle school program, and let's find out how he's doing it in this difficult environment. So, Carol?
Hi, thank you, Dale. And hi, Jose. It's so good to be here with you. So yeah, like Dale said,
Yeah.
you teach at the charter middle school and you also teach the varsity in the high school. So we talked about your experience in the spring and the summer and how you are moving forward into the fall with some of those ideas for virtually online. And you did have some great ideas that you figured out, and I'm so glad that you've agreed to share them. So for the spring, and again, these are ways for the way you're moving forward into the fall. You had a great way of bringing all of those students, over 200 of them between the varsity, the junior varsity, and your workshop students together. So can you talk a little bit about how you're going to take some of those ideas and put them into your fall?
Yeah. So first off, when we had the JV and varsity workshop when the season was canceled and all that, I had to first start forming a group for next year. So what I started doing is I took the workshop kids, the JV kids, and the varsity that were not 8th graders, and we made a Google document. I asked a bunch of questions, simple questions about themselves, so they can get to know each other, because obviously these kids aren't in the same class. So what we did is I created a game in Kahoot. If you ever heard of Kahoot, it's an awesome gaming system. You can make your own quizzes and then the kids get to know each other. So the kids got to play that, which was a lot of fun for them. They got to know each other. So it just made them a little bit more confident being on the screen and seeing everybody on Zoom, which was very awesome to do. And then from there, we started going and doing technique, a lot of technique stuff. And then from there, I started separating them from their skill set into a JV list, into a varsity list, so I can have that ready going into the fall next year.
Great. And so you also had multiple teachers, right? That you were able to utilize. And can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about how you did it maybe alone versus with those other teachers?
Yes. So for the first part, I was alone. I was alone doing everything. So what I did is I focused mostly on basics, and then I got the staff to come in and see them. As soon as we started seeing them on basics, we started making a list, our individual list of who should be in what list, who are the new students should be on the JV list, and the oldest kids will start putting them in the varsity list. And then after that, I took over for the first 7 weeks by myself, and then the last 2 weeks, I started bringing in the staff. So what we did is for the first 2 weeks, we just focused on basics, separated them after the third week. So on the third week, we started focusing more on technique and choreography. So I taught the whole color guard a flag piece, a dance piece, a saber piece, and a rifle piece. And then after that, they started showing me their skill set, and then I just kept adding on it. And then after that, I started splitting them on Zoom on a breakout room. I started putting them as who are the dancers of the group, who are the rifles of the group, who are the sabers, and et cetera, the flags. And then as soon as I started doing that, I started adding choreography every single time just to keep these kids excited. But the first thing I did to keep them entertained, which was very important through Zoom, was during the process of teaching them choreography, I did basic skills. We did a rifle block, and then we went straight into rifle choreography. Then I did flag block, I did flag choreography, so et cetera, because I did notice the first week when I started just doing technique, the entire time I started losing them. After the first 30 minutes, they started disappearing, and their screen started turning black and all that. So as soon as I started doing choreography right after that rifle block, they seemed to wake up and were super on it after that. So as soon as I separated it, it made sense, and the kids were so on it, and they were just focused, because it was just not basics the entire time, because when they're 10 years old, sometimes they don't want to listen to the basics, and they get more excited with choreography stuff, of course.
So there was more of a goal. They knew that it was a short amount of technique, and then they were going to have something to do right after that. So it kind of kept them,
Mhm.
yeah. And could you talk a little bit about, did you take, this is something that we hadn't talked about, but did you take little breaks even on Zoom in between, like a full session of rifle and then choreography? Did you take a break before you went on to flag technique and then choreography?
Yeah, so sometimes we spent once a week, like on a Monday, we spent 4 hours. So what I did is I spent 40 minutes on one piece of equipment. I spent 20 minutes on technique, and then I try to do 20 minutes on choreography. Obviously, if they were not good at technique, we spent more time on technique because
Okay.
it's more of a reward for them. But so I did take 20-minute breaks in between just to go get them water, just to walk around, and just to keep going, get some water, especially because we live at the desert and they're outside most of the time. So that was the biggest thing, just a
With
lot
their
of water break.
cameras. They're
Mhm.
outside with, okay.
Yes.
So, and then you took some of these phrases that you were giving them, and then you started to think forward into the future, even though there's no competition and maybe no performances going forward. Can you talk a little bit about how you did that?
Yeah. So when I first started looking at them and equipment, I started basing them off their talents on what piece of equipment I would like to see them in the future. So I
Mm,
started this thing called a breakout room, and I started putting like a group of six in a flag group, six on a dance group, six and six. So there was a group of 24. 12, yeah, 24, 24, and then I just kept adding 16. I would hop on to one Zoom to the next breakout room, teach them 16 counts while the other groups got to work on their stuff. And then I would hop on to the next one, keep adding on. And then I started realizing, I'm like, you know what, we can do something with this. I can use the school. We have a pretty large school. There's a playground. There's many areas. There's a bunch of trees, and it's a good area to play around with. And I thought, well, hey, how can I do something with music that I could use in the future if there's no competitive season to keep these kids entertained? And I thought of, okay, well, I'm going to create a show around the school. So I started putting music to some of these choreographies that I was to the choreography I was teaching the students, and then I kept adding on, adding on, adding on, and then thinking about, okay, I'm gonna plug this 16 counts on the stairwell over here at the school. I'm gonna put these 16 counts. It's gonna ripple into these 16 counts over here by the tree, and then they're gonna see a flag feature happening in the playground, and then the kids over here are gonna transfer over and they're gonna come into the NPR. Then they're gonna be in the stage. So it's a bunch of just a fun show using our tools that we have that's going to be safe for our kids, obviously, during this time.
now that doesn't mean that you're going back. That means you're thinking future. At some
Yes.
future time, it kind of kept you motivated, and then you were able to come up with more material that you could keep adding on to for them. Because let's face it, maybe in the future, you're going to have to put virtual backgrounds behind their breakout room or
Mm-hmm.
something, you figure out
Yeah.
the technology. But that's really cool. So, some of the things too that you told me about that I thought were really cool was actually how you teach them. Technically yourself online, how you face
Mm-hmm.
them, and can you talk a little bit about the mirroring?
Yeah. So in Zoom there wasn't a mirror button. I think they just recently added it. I just saw it. I
Oh,
barely saw it today. So there is a mirror
oh,
button.
cool. That's
But
great
what I
information.
yeah, yeah, but what I have been doing is I've been basically teaching the basics and teaching choreography. But before I do it, I write it obviously, and then I teach it to myself the opposite way, so they can learn it in a fast rate. Because the first 2 weeks I try to teach them through Zoom, and it was very difficult for them to understand, obviously, because it was mirror, so it got a little confusing. But as soon as after the second week, I started mirroring everything, and I started teaching myself in the opposite way. They just learned at a quicker rate, so it really helped out. That so teaching them obviously in the opposite way, and they can see you and not be mirrored. It helped. And then the one thing I suggested was always, always, always don't stop what you're doing. That's like my biggest thing. I was thinking a lot about, okay, what should I change to make this better? What should I change to make this better during online teaching? And I thought, no, I'm just gonna stick to what I'm good at and just translate it to teaching it online. because that is the biggest thing I learned. And it's working out so far. The kids are doing great, and I'm not having a lot of challenges with it. Obviously, we can clean and do detailed more things live, but it's sticking to the path that we know is helping me a lot.
Great. So you're not worried so much about their timing right now, especially with, we're all learning about how to sync up music, and the Bluetooth has a little bit of lag versus a different kind of microphone, things like that. So you're more concerned with their technique, and then teaching them more choreography, seeing what they're skilled at, and
Yeah.
really honing in on those things. That is great information, and I love that you talk about not changing, not thinking you have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, or reinvent their whole experience. And kids these days are really tech savvy anyway, and they're, they get it. So that's great. So if anyone has any other questions for Jose, or feel free to contact me through the WGI website, and we'll go from there. So thank you so much, Jose, for sharing your experiences.